All rise.
Molim da svi ustanu.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Specijalizovana veća Kosova zasedaju. Predsjedavajući sudija, izvolite sedite.
Madam Court Officer, please call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is file case CBC 2020-06. The Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasniqi.
Thank you. For the record, I note that the accused are all present in court today. Before the next witness is brought in, there are a few preliminary matters to address. First, the panel will rule on the admission of the audio-visual recordings of W04264's witness statement tendered by the SBO in filing number F02964, to which the defense did not respond. Having found W04264's statement admissible pursuant to Rules 138, paragraph 1, and 155, the panel admits into evidence the corresponding audio-visual recordings as identified in Annex 1 to the filing F02964, and directs the registry to assign the admitted audio-visual recordings the same exhibit numbers which have been assigned to the relevant Rule 155 statements as indicated in Annex 1 to filing F02964. The panel further directs the SBO to make submissions on the classification of the admitted audio-video recordings. Mr. Prosecutor, can you make that submission at this time?
I will confirm and get back to you shortly, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Next, the panel will give the floor to the Thaçi defense to make a submission as anticipated via email. Do we need to be in private session, Mr. Visitich?
Mr. President, if you would, I think the prosecution first had a motion to add exhibits, and I can do my motion and response all in one. I think it'll be more efficient that way.
That's fine. Please take us into private session. before we leave the room, and it's relevant to what's going on right now, this witness will, it looks to me like, at least go into tomorrow during his testimony and cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor, we revised our direct examination estimate to 4 hours, so now it's 10 o'clock, so yes, it looks like cross-examination would start tomorrow.
And number two, we have one other witness scheduled this week. Do we have anybody scheduled next week? Actually scheduled?
Yes, so we have one other witness scheduled this week, and I'm told that that witness can start essentially as soon as this one finishes, even though it's video link with just enough notice. For next week, we do have the one notified witness who's scheduled for Tuesday, because Monday is a public holiday, and I'm told that that Tuesday appointment cannot be moved. We're on public session, I won't go into further details. Your Honors are aware fully of the situation, but for all intents and purposes, we intend to be here on Tuesday to examine the witness, and then we'll take it from there. But that is our schedule, and he will be the one witness in our Thursday notification.
Thank you, that's all. We'll step aside for a few minutes.
All right. All rise.
Be seated.
Your Honor, if I may update you about the question you asked me about before the break about confidentiality. It's unrelated to the
Give me
matter.
just a minute, please. All right, go ahead now, Mr. Butch.
Thank you. This is not about the matter that was discussed with you before the break. This morning you asked whether the audio-video for 4264, what the classification is. And then in that regard, I say that part 1 should be confidential, and that is consistent with the request we made via email for reclassification of the Rule 155 statement, and that was an email dated 20 January 2025. So both the transcript and the video, only part 1 needs to be confidential, the rest can be public. And that's for 4264, witness 4264.
All right, so ordered. Only part 1 will be confidential. All right, on the issue at hand, we will give you, Mr. Misitich, some time to meet with your client. All of you can have time to meet with your clients until 2:30 today. We will take up the matter at 2:30. The document referred to as the Combi article will not be added to the exhibit list. There was a timeliness issue. There was a problem with good cause in that the failure of the SPO to fully investigate an article of which they had notice. We will overrule the objection to leading questions as set out in paragraph 12 and 63. So questions may be asked on those issues by the SPO. Finally, the remaining exhibits other than that Combi article may be added. And that ends the oral order on those issues, or on that issue. So we will be adjourned until 2:30, and if there is some issue arising after that, Mr. Misitich, still arising, please bring it to our attention, but we'll give you that. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me finish up. Let me finish saying that. You bring it to our attention at the time, and we'll take a look at it, but this is our ruling for now.
Understood. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Laws.
Thank you. I need to ask the panel's leave to reply to a filing from Friday. On the 11th of March, the panel invited submissions from Victims' Council in relation to the SBO's observations in relation to detention conditions. In that email, a timetable was set for responses from the defence, and it was stipulated that there were to be no replies, hence my submission. I would like the panel's leave to reply, please. We filed on the 18th of March, and the Salimi and Vasseli defences both filed responses last Friday, the 21st of March. We wish to reply only to the Vasseli response, which makes what we consider to be an incorrect statement in relation to our filing, and it's of some significance to us. If we're given permission to file a reply, I can tell Your Honour that it will be less than 200 words long, and it will be filed today.
Any objection from the Vasily defense?
Your Honour, I don't know what the issue pertains to, what the inaccuracy is that's being alleged, but we would have no objection if the matter is limited to that question alone.
That's exactly what Mr. Lowe said. Perhaps an inter-party discussion would be an assistance also. But yes, your leave to file a reply is granted.
Thank you.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated, please. Before getting to the witness, we have another oral order that has to be dealt with. The panel notes that in F03045, the SBO requested leave to amend its exhibit list to add 6 documents. Oh, I think we did that already, didn't we? Yeah, we've done that. I'm sorry. All right, we will call the witness in now.
I must stay? I must stay?
No. Witness, can you hear me?
Paul.
Yes.
The court usher will now provide you with a text of a solemn declaration which you are asked to take pursuant to our Rules of Procedure number 141, paragraph 2. Please look at the document and then read it aloud.
Betimi solemn.
Solemn declaration. Pursuant to Rule 1422, conscious of the significance of my testimony and my legal responsibility, I solemnly declare that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that I shall not withhold anything which has come to my knowledge.
Witness, you can be seated now. Witness, today we will start your testimony, which is expected to last approximately 2 days. As you may know, the prosecution will ask you questions first. Once they are finished, the defense has the right to ask questions of you, and members of the panel might also ask questions of you. The prosecution estimate for your examination is 2 hours. I believe you changed that to 4 hours, did you not, Mr. Potch? Yeah, okay. So they will have 4 hours with you. The defense estimates that it will need up to 10 hours. And as regards each estimate, we hope that counsel will be judicious in the use of their time. The panel may allow redirect examination if conditions for it are met. Witness, please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will clarify. Also, please try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of facts and circumstances that you will be asked about. In the event you are asked by the SBO to attest to some corrections made regarding your statements, you are reminded to confirm on the record that the written statement, as corrected by the list of corrections, accurately reflects your declaration. Please also speak into those microphones and wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and then speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. During the next days, while you are giving evidence in this court, you are not allowed to discuss with anyone the content of your testimony outside of the courtroom. If any person asks you questions outside of this court about your testimony, please let us know. Please stop talking if I ask you to do so, and also stop talking if you see me raise my hand. These indications mean that I need to give you an instruction. If you feel the need to take breaks, please make an indication and an accommodation will be made. So we begin first with the questions from the Special Prosecutor's Office. They're seated to your left. Please give them your attention. Mr. Potch, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon, witness.
Good afternoon.
But I'll introduce myself again. I'm James Potch, a prosecutor with the SPO, and as the judge said, I'll be asking you questions for the next 4 hours or so. Could you state your name?
I am
Naim Maloku.
What is your date of birth?
17th February 1958.
Where were you born?
In the village of Labian, municipality of Peja, Kosovo.
Do you recall participating in an interview with the ICTY in 2005?
I do. This was 20 years ago.
Recall participating in an SPRK hearing in an investigation in 2011?
Yes, I testified under oath in court in Jakova.
Do you recall also participating in an interview with the SPRK in 2016?
Po,
In Kosovo?
po,
Yes. Yes.
In an interview with the SPO in 2019 in another country?
po,
Yes. In the country where I reside, in Slovenia.
In the last weeks, the written transcripts or records of the interviews and hearing that I just referred to were read to you, and you were provided with an opportunity to provide clarifications in relation to them.
po e vërtet.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you recall that you made a number of clarifications and corrections to them?
Po e vërtet.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you recall these clarifications and corrections being included in a note which was read back to you?
Po,
Yes, I do.
Subject to the corrections and clarifications set out in the note, is the information in the statement and transcripts which I refer to you today accurate and truthful to the best of your knowledge and belief?
jam munduar me
I tried to be accurate.
Subject to the corrections set out in the note, do the statement and transcript which I referred you to today accurately reflect what you would say if you were examined about the events recorded in those documents?
mendoj që do të
I think I will stand by those.
Seek admission of the prior statements and one associated exhibit. These were authorized for admission in decision F0 to 913. The relevant ERNs are set out in Annex 1 to Preparation Note 1, which we also seek to admit, and that is 126641-126649.
Any objection to that tender?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
The enumerated documents will be admitted and be assigned a number.
You want to see if I can do that now on the record? The first item listed as ERN T0002976 TRET Part 1, and its Albanian corresponding language combination will be assigned Exhibit P02087.1. T0002976 TRET Part 2, and its Albanian version will be Exhibit P02087.2. T0002977 TRET Part 1 underscore core interp, and its Albanian corresponding version will be Exhibit P02087.3. Then the next item, SPOE 000-70682 to SPOE 000-70698. And specifically therein, as far as I understand, it's only pages SPOE 000-70682 to 70685.
If I may assist, the entirety of that can be given one number because the division is only the English, the associated exhibit that's admitted, and then the Albanian, so it only needs one number.
Thank you for that clarification. So the entire ERN SPOE 000-70682 to SPOE 000-70698 will be Exhibit P02088. Then SPOE 000-67215 to SPOE 000-67221 RED, and the corresponding English translation will be Exhibit P02089. ERNs 064883 to 064886, RED, which is in Slovenian and has corresponding English and Albanian translations, will be assigned Exhibit P0209.0.1. 064887, TRET Part 1, and its Albanian corresponding will be assigned Exhibit P0209.0.2. 064887, TRET, and the corresponding Albanian Part 2, apologies, will be assigned Exhibit P0209.0.3. 064887, TRET Part 3, and the corresponding Albanian will be assigned Exhibit P0209.0.4. 064888, TRET Part 1, and 064888, TRET Part 1 will be Exhibit P0209.0.5. 064888, TRET Part 2 red, and its Albanian corresponding will be Exhibit P0209.0.6. And 064888, TRET Part 3, and the corresponding Albanian will be Exhibit P0209.0.7. And lastly, the preparation note with 126641 to 126649 will be Exhibit P0209.1. Those were all the numbers, and if we can clarify the classification for all.
They can all be public except for... No, they can all be public. Thank you.
So reclassified as public. Mr. Potch, questions?
Yes. Before that, Your Honor, with your leave, I'll read the short summary of the 154 statement.
Yes, go ahead.
The following is a summary of this witness's now admitted Rule 154 statements. W04403 is a Kosovar Albanian who occupied various roles in the KLA in locations including Dukagjini. W04403 was a member of the Operational Directorate of the KLA General Staff. W04403 provides evidence concerning his roles and responsibilities in the KLA, certain meetings he attended in 1998 and 1999, the structure and organization of KLA units, and his interactions with other KLA members. Witness, in your ICTY interview, you mentioned meeting Ibrahim Kelmendi and Shavit Haliti in Femi Ladrovski's apartment or home in Munich. Do you recall when that meeting took place?
Po, ka qenë fund.
Yes, this was at the end of November 1997.
Do you recall who else was present?
Ka qenë
Mark Shala was present, Diana Regebi, journalist from Zagreb, Ton Marku, and Martin Berisha. These people, except for me, were not present in another meeting we had, which was attended by Femi Ladrovski Javid Khalidi, whom at the time I only knew as Zeka.
And you mentioned Ibrahim Kelmendi. What was his role at the time of this meeting in December 97?
Nuk e di çfarë.
I don't know what his role was. I knew him through Fehmi, and I believe that he had close ties with the KLA and that he had been active in Kosovo since 1992.
So if you said it was the end of November 97, and I have the same question in relation to Shavit Haliti. What, if anything,
It may be the case. You understand that I struggle a little bit with the dates.
could you tell us, to your knowledge, what Shavit Haliti's role was at this time, at the time of this meeting you're just describing?
Nuk e ka prezantuar.
He did not introduce his role. He only introduced himself as Zeka.
So he didn't introduce his role. What, to your knowledge, what was his role at the time?
Unë kam qenë I bindur.
I was convinced that Javid Khalidi, Fehmi Ladrozi, and Ibrahim Kelmendi were three important individuals in the direction of the KLA. Fehmi Ladrozi, I knew him from my studies in Zagreb when I was in the military academy. He was studying mechanical machinery in the University of Zagreb. However, I trusted both of them, Fehmi and Ibrahim.
And do you recall meeting Ibrahim Kelmendi and Shavit Haliti after this meeting at Fehmi Ladrovzi's place?
Me Ibrahim Kelmendi.
I met with Ibrahim Kelmendi, but I met more frequently with Fehmi Ladrozi in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, and in Prague, in the Czech Republic, on 2 occasions, on the 7th month and the beginning of 98.
To focus on meetings with Ibrahim Kelmendi and or Shavit Haliti after this November-December 97 meeting. Do you recall meeting Mr. Kelmendi and Mr. Haliti at another meeting?
Me Ibrahim Kelmendi.
Ibrahim Kelmendi was the first I met with when I went to Tirana with the intention of joining the KLA. This was on the 8th of March, 98. Ibrahim Kelmendi and Javid Khalidi, I met both of them together in the course of March or beginning of April, 98, in the house where I lived during my stay in Albania. I always knew Javid Khalidi as Zeka, though.
In your 2005 ICTY interview, you mentioned your book a number of times, and I'd now like to call up an item, which is U0023041-U002-3143, alongside the English translation U002-3041-U002-3045-ET, and we'll go to the first page in both, please. The exhibits I'm calling up today, while an open session, can be broadcasted to the public. Witness, do you see on your screen on the left an item in Albanian and on the right the translation in English of that item?
Po.
Yes.
The book that you were referring to in your ICTY interview?
Po, jem.
Yes, I was asked about the book and I accepted it as mine.
And the title here includes Agim Zogai and in brackets dialogue with Naim Maloku. To your knowledge, does the book accurately reflect what you said during that dialogue?
Po, libri.
The book represents and reflects what I said to Agim Zogai during the interview he conducted with me.
And to your knowledge, is the information you provided during that interview truthful?
Mundodh.
It may be that there were some small exaggerations in there, but in general terms, the book reflects my past, my activity during the period of time I was asked about.
Do you recall any particular issue or incident that you provided some exaggerations about in this dialogue as captured in the book?
Oște teni rast kur
There is a case when I'm asked how we managed to convince the international monitoring mission in Kosovo that the KLA had a structure which was complied with by the organizational levels of the KLA. I mentioned two cases. You know that in autumn '98, based on the resolution of the Security Council of the United Nations, an international monitoring mission was deployed in Kosovo, which monitored not only the events in general, what the Serbian forces were doing, but also the KLA and our activity. To my knowledge, they met frequently with me and other people during my time in Kosovo, at least. I mentioned two cases in which we confirmed and certified that we were a serious army, which led us to participate in the peace negotiations in Rambouillet. There is a case of 7 soldiers being made prisoners in the Shala operational zone, and the discussions and negotiations for their release were conducted by members of the General Staff in Likots and Dragobil. And a case where I happened to be at the operational directorate. This occurred in Mitrovica, involving a request by Serbia for a unit, our unit in Mitrovica, to surrender, and they forwarded this request through the international representatives. These international representatives were saying that the opposing party would treat those soldiers as per the international laws, and the decision and desire of those soldiers was not to surrender. We conducted an operation because we were able to monitor the communications of the Serbian forces who had surrounded the area. So we knew a path, a way out of there. A soldier was killed there, one was wounded. We managed to withdraw the unit, and this is what happened.
In relation to these incidents, could you clarify to the judges what, if anything, you may have exaggerated in your book?
Maybe I presented the structure, the organizational structure and the commanding chain as very strict. I would like to explain that the Kosovo Liberation Army was a voluntary regular army. From the first to the last soldier, it was a voluntary army. It was not mobilized based on the laws of the government, the Ministry of Defense, but it was a self-organized army based on voluntary basis. It is a rule, as you might know, that in every army, every voluntary unit has certain responsibilities, obligations that differ from armies, units that are mobilized based on orders and laws. For example, if a voluntary soldier appears to the brigade after a month for various reasons, he may leave the unit and he's not regarded as a deserter because he came there on a voluntary basis and could leave. This applies to the implementation of the orders and the commanding chain. It may happen that a voluntary soldier may not implement an order and he could not be held responsible before the organs of that voluntary army, which are set up to institute discipline within the structure of that army. So this is where the difference is between an army built based on the law and by the institutions of the state from regular voluntary army organized on a voluntary basis where everybody is a volunteer. That was a minor exaggeration, I would say. But we were respected and our units respected the general staff. So they respected the structure, the zone commander. But we have to bear in mind that the situation is not the same in a voluntary-based army compared to a regular army based on the law. And if they violate the law, they will be held responsible before the justice and the respective organs of that state.
The page ending 3043 in both items on our screen. And witness, here we see reference to 2000. Is that the year when this book containing your interview was published?
Yes. That is the book that was published. And this shows my story. And this is me presented through the story in that book.
Wasn't?
Yes, in 5,000 copies.
Let's, in the Albanian, turn to the page ending 3088, which is page 48 of the PDF. And in English, we need to call up a different translation. And that's going to be U002-3080-U002-3141-ET. And it's the same page, 3088, but the PDF page is page 9. I will read from the beginning of the second paragraph. Witness, you can either follow in Albanian or listen to the interpretation in Albanian, and then I will ask you a question. During my stay in Tirana, I had an experience with two individuals who presented themselves in the name of the KLA Central Staff, who came and told me that they had no need for officers. Those people presented themselves with pseudonyms, Besnik from the district of Pea and Dervish from Drenica. And perhaps it would assist if in the Albanian we focus on the left-hand side of the page. Thank you.
Yes, I remember that meeting.
That the KLA still did not have sufficient weapons to incorporate officers into the war, which did not make any sense to me. At that time, I was in continual contact with Ilir Konushevtsi, and in brackets we have Merjimi, who insisted that we officers should get into Kosovo. As far as I know, even within the central staff of the KLA, a part of the leadership was in favor of the officers entering Kosovo, whereas another part opposed. And really, in my opinion, both sides were right. On one occasion, for example, Shabit Haliti had told me that the lads of the KLA had reservations towards the officers because we had served in a different time. Now, my first question is, when, what month and year, did the meeting with the two individuals you refer to here take place?
Ka qenë fundi
It was end of March,
To be clear, was that 1998?
98.
po këtu e kam zbut.
Here I have softened, if you like, my description. Both sides were right. The side that had reservations toward us didn't have any right. We welcome Albanian officers in the wars in Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia. And they have left indelible impressions in those wars. The reservations expressed towards us were unjust, counterproductive, and damaging to the war and to the establishment of the KLA. The KLA, in our opinion, needed as many professionals to join it, educated professionals, in order to help to set up its organizational structure and to contribute to a more effective, more professional resistance for the liberation of Kosovo. I have toned down somewhat the expressions there in order to strike a balance. Year 2000 was a typical year in Kosovo. The war was over, and I tried to keep a balance among different political lines, and that's what I wanted to make clear here.
Names of the two individuals, the ones who presented themselves in the name of the KLA Central Staff and told you there was no need for officers.
Po e kam marrë
Yes, I found out after the war. Besnik is Hussein Kajeli. He used to live very near my home, but I left Kosovo at a very young age and I didn't know him. Burim used to be from another village, I think Dush village. I didn't know that, but I have a first cousin of mine is married to his distant cousin.
Recall that Burim's surname?
Marmullaku.
Marmullaku.
In this excerpt, you mentioned Ilir Konushevtsi. Do you know what his role was at the time of that you're talking about here, March 98?
Ilir Konushevtsi ishte njëri
Ilir Konushevsky was a key figure in the logistics for the KLA in Albania. He was very insistent. He wanted as many officers, soldiers to enter Kosovo and join the ranks of the KLA. I know that he did his utmost to have experienced colleagues of mine from the wars in Croatia and Bosnia to come to Kosovo. And at his insistence and request, I called on many of them. Also at the insistence of Ibrahim Kelmendi. Both of them were in the same line of the same opinion. And I remember I received those officers who came, Ibn Kadri Kastati, Jelal Haidi, Tony, Idris Baila, and through Ilir Konushevtsi, and Kerim Kelmendi, who was in Bayramtsuri, we helped them enter Kosovo.
How did you know what you stated here in relation to part of the KLA Central Staff being in favor of officers entering Kosovo and part opposing that entrance?
Si nisi lufta.
The way the war started in Kosovo, we officers, a large number of them, came from many countries. I came from Slovenia. The Prekaz battle started on the 5th of March. I came to Tirana on the 8th of March with my own personal uniform, which I had from the war in Croatia. I had kept that uniform. Then Bislim Zurapi came, Agim Ramadani, Hafir Hoxha, Jafer Gashi, Kadri Kastrati. They came, Agim Chela. They came from Croatia. Jafer Kabashi too. And others that now I can't remember the names. So all of us officers, we had Bislim Zurapi to maintain links with the staff that we thought it was a central staff in Tirana. Bislim was the link between all of us officers who stayed together in Tirana, who were waiting to join the KLA, with that staff, which I never showed an interest to find out where it was based. He told us that there is reservations regarding our entry into Kosovo and setting up the organizational structures of the KLA.
And you mentioned just now that you went to Tirana on the 8th of March, and in your SPO interview you said you crossed into Kosovo on the 21st of April. Can you clarify, had it been your intention to stay in Albania rather than Kosovo for that month and a half or so?
No, I was certain that within 1 or 2 days I would enter Kosovo.
Why did you not enter Kosovo within 1 or 2 days?
Because there were some kind of preparations made. Then I didn't stay there in vain. Together with Bislim Zurapi, with the assistance of Ilir Konoshevsky and with the establishment of the structures for the camp in Albania, we set up a training camp with Bislim Zurapi Cheret in the vicinity of Durrës. Bislim appointed Bislam Gashi and Kadri Kastrati to deal with the training of the volunteers that came from all over the places. And we thought that they needed some preparations, at least some initial military preparation before entering Kosovo. Agim Ramadani, Hafir Hoxha, and Jafer Gashi set up this camp in Daiti Mountains near Tirana. We set up 2 training camps for the training of these soldiers. Bislim Zurapi, Nasser Idrisi and myself, we went to the logistical bases in Kukës and Bayramtsuri to establish a structure, organizational structure for these bases, so that the weapons that were collected in those bases, to check them from the technical point of view, and so that when the soldiers were given the weapons to these soldiers that were supposed to go to Kosovo, were in good shape, were operational. Because before, such an organization was never the case. The soldiers were given weapons, and we heard that in some instances these weapons were not operational. So this is what we did in the meantime. Another thing, some weapons we trained, we showed these volunteers how to use the anti-tank mines, explaining the details, how to use the adequate mine, because there were different mines. So I remember that I explained such things because I was familiar with this weapon. I was educated for this kind of weapon. And I remember very well that we did a good work, so that the volunteers who came from the West first go to these training camps and then go to the logistical base, get functional weapons, and then enter Kosovo. So that the weapons were technically in order. I think we did a good work as professional officers. And I would kindly ask the court and you, Mr. Prosecutor, to tell you that at the beginning of April 98, Bislim Zurapi, Agim Ramadani, and myself decided that we don't have anti-personnel mines in our army. It is the only army that during all the time when it functioned and operated, it was not trained and it didn't use mines, anti-personnel mines. Our land, it was our land, our state. Those mines might remain there and hidden, and after decades they might cause damages to the population, to the livestock. We communicated that to Ilir Konoshevsky. We couldn't order him, but we advised him and told him never give such mines to the soldiers and create minefields against the infantry in the territory of Kosovo. If some incident happens in the future, the Kosovo Liberation Army won't be held responsible for planting such mines if a child or a civilian is damaged by the mines. We knew that neither Russia or United States had signed the conventions against use of anti-personnel mines, but we implemented, we signed such conventions without actually signing them.
Yes,
we
sir.
take a break for lunch also.
Yes, yes, Your Honor. Just before we go to Veric Witness, you are answering my questions, but if I may remark, you're being very verbose, you're using many words. If I could ask you to be more succinct, and also if I raise my hand, it would be because you're going beyond the scope. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, I just have a limited time and material to cover.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to break for lunch now, witness. Sorry you had to wait so long this morning to begin, but it was necessary. So we're going to break for lunch until 2:30, then we'll come back to court.
I'm here available to the justice.
You may leave with the court attendant now. We're adjourned until 2:30.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated. Before the witness is brought in, the panel will rule on the Vesely defense request for an extension of time. On March 19, 2025, the Vesely defense requested via email that the panel extend the deadline for the defense to respond to the SBO's filing of F03028 to 9 April 2025. The SBO indicated it does not oppose the request. Having considered the request and in view of the current schedule for the closing of the SBO's case by 15 April 2025, the panel, pursuant to Rule 9, Paragraph 5, extends the deadline to respond to F03028 to 4 April 2025. Any reply shall be filed according to the usual time limit set out in Rule 76. This concludes the panel's order. Madam Court Usher, please bring the witness in. All right, Mr. Molaku, we will continue with the questioning from the prosecution, but I do remind you to please listen to the question and just answer the question concisely, and do not go into other areas beyond the subject of the question. Mr. Paci may continue.
Thank you.
So we can take the document on the screen down. Good afternoon, witness.
Jutta.
Good afternoon.
In your ICTY interview, you refer to a meeting in Dobrosh when the headquarters for Reka Ekeche were formed. Do you recall who attended the meeting in Dobrosh?
Ka qenë gjysma e dy.
This was in the second half of June, and in the meeting in Dobrosh, where the commanders of the staffs of 20 villages, after Unic was taken over, which was the biggest village, we gained that territory following a military operation. After Salih Veseli had arrived, he arrived at the end of May. And then we met in Dobrosh sometime in the second half of June 1998.
Salih Veseli at that meeting in Dobrosh?
Po,
Yes, Salih Veseli organized this. He was the highest ranking officer in Kosovo at the time. We entered into the country as based on our ranks or positions or education. Salih Veseli had graduated from the academy. He had the highest ranking, and he came there with the purpose of organizing the brigade in Rekekece.
A nickname or pseudonym at this time of the meeting?
po, ishte vetimi.
Yes, he was the initiator.
And can I hear the word in Albanian that the witness used for that nickname from the interpreter, please?
Unë kom pas një
Witness, could you actually just repeat the nickname in Albanian, and can I just have a repetition of the nickname in Albanian?
vetima.
Vedetima, thunder or lightning.
Yeah. Witness, could you tell the judges briefly what was discussed at this meeting in Dobrosh when Salih Veseli was there?
U diskutue për
The discussion was about the fact that there were 20 villages under KLA control in that territory. So UNIC and another 19 villages. Each of them had their own KLA staff. During my stay in that territory, we had 2 training camps. I led one of them, and the other one was led by Afrim Basha with the pseudonym Abi.
Now I'm interested only in brief what was discussed at the meeting.
u diskutua që
It was discussed that we had sufficient territory under our control to set up a brigade.
Thank you. I'd like to call up IT-04-84 P00130 side by side with the English translation, which has the same ERN with -ET. And we can stay on the first page of both, please. And witness, once again, there's a document on the left of your screen in Albanian, and on the right is its English translation. Had you seen you last week?
unë përpara nuk e kom pa.
I had not seen it before, but the content of this document is accurate.
We'll get to that. Witness, we see that the title is The Founding Meeting of the Kosovo Liberation Army, Reka Staff. And we also see it's dated 15 June 98 in Dobrosh. Do you see that?
Po, dobro.
Yes, the brush.
We see the first sentence mentioning Vetima, Major, appointed as commander. And if we can scroll to the bottom of the page, both in Albanian and English, we see it appears to be signed by Commander Vetima. Could you clarify who that would be?
Po,
Yes. This is Sali Veseli.
And do you recognize that as Sali Veseli's signature as Vetima?
po, ky është
Yes, this is the signature of Sali Veseli. All the documents he issued with respect to appointments at the staff of a brigade and battalion commanders bore his signature, as I remember.
Signature towards the left, we see mention of Lum Hadju as the record holder. Do you know who that is?
po, ky ishte
Yes, this was Haydin Abazi, who came from Sweden. He was an intellectual, spoke English, and he was appointed to the brigade staff in charge of communication with the media and representatives of the international community.
Line, if we can scroll back up in both versions, please. We see a reference to Agroni Captain. Do you know who that is?
po,
Yes, Agron was Rifat Suleimani. He had also completed the military academy. He came in together with Salih Veseli and then was then appointed commander of the 2nd Battalion.
Line mentions a Bezniku. Was that your pseudonym at the time of this meeting?
unë kam hyrë në
I crossed into Marine on the 22nd of April 1998, just like Naim Maloku. And then 2 days later, I heard the news that the Serb propaganda had claimed that I had died, after which I took and used this pseudonym, Besnik, which I used for a month or a month and a half until the end of June or beginning of July.
Items, please. And witness, again, had you seen this document on your screen on the left in Albanian before I showed it to you last week?
dëgjoni, unë
Look, I've seen many documents, but I do not remember having seen this. This document was issued by the brigade commander, Salih Veseli.
On to the bottom page of both versions, and we can look at the signature there, witness. Do you recognize that signature?
po,
Yes. Yes, this is Salih Veseli's signature.
You're going to seek to admit this document.
Any objection?
No objection.
No, Your Honor.
IT 0484P00130, plus the English translation is admitted. Please assign an exhibit number.
Your Honor, that will be assigned Exhibit P02092, and I note it's already public in legal workbook.
Fine, it'll remain public.
We can take this document down. And I'd like to now call up 126674-126682. side by side with the translation, which is at 126674-126679-ET, and let's please turn to page 126678 in both. Thank you. And let's witness, do you see the document on the left of your screen in color?
På.
Yes.
Turn to the next page in both items, please. This is page 126679. Do you see that on your screen? Witness, it's a different page.
På.
Yes.
Kindly go back to the previous page, 126678 now. Just to be clear, as I said before, since we're in an open session, these items can be broadcasted. And witness, did you provide this document to the SPO?
På.
Yes.
Did you receive this document?
Det kommer
I received it sometime in December 98, when we were issued identification cards, all of us working at the General Staff of the Kosovo Liberation Army. I kept this with me until the end of the war.
And where were you? What location were you at when this was given to you?
kom känna sig dina
I was at the seat of the General Staff in the village of Divjak.
Your Honor, we seek to tender this item, which, as I mentioned, would be 126674-126682, pages 126678 and 79.
Any objection?
No objection.
None? 126674 and 1222-1226682, and the translation at pages 126678 and 79, admitted.
Be honest, those pages will be assigned Exhibit P02093, and can we confirm that they can be public?
Yes, thank you. And we can take this document down, court officer. And witness, in your SPO interview and during witness preparation, you refer to becoming a member of the KLA General Staff and first going to the KLA General Staff on 15 November 1998 and to seeing Sali Veseli there that day. You also stated that Bislim Zerapi invited you to become part of the KLA General Staff. Now, my question is, when did Bislim Zerapi invite you to join?
Bislim Zerapi ka ditë që
Bislim Zerapi knew that I was in Ladrovts. I was sheltered at my maternal uncle's house because I was wounded. I met with Bislim Zerapi 2 days before the 15th of November. And then on the 15th of November, Bislim Zerapi sent a car for me in the village of Ladrovts at my uncle's. It was a Jeep Cherokee. We viewed it as the vehicle of the Chief of Staff. There was a driver who then drove me to the General Staff.
Your first day there on the 15th of November 98. Other than Sali Veseli, did you meet or see anyone else over there that day?
e kom patur Shaban
I saw Shaban Daraga there, who was chief of Brigade 121, with his seat close to the staff. I saw Sali Veseli, Bislim introduced him. Actually, he said he will be the chief of the operational directorate. Otherwise, I had known Sali Veseli from Munich. I do not remember other people. Perhaps I saw other individuals, but I don't recall.
16 SPRK interview, you refer to the KLA General Staff Headquarters being in Divyake, near Klečka. Could you briefly describe the building or buildings
Yes.
staff was based in when you were there from November 1998?
Po fillimisht ka qenë
Initially, it was a house different from other houses in the village because it has a white colored facade, outer walls. We all called it the White House. Since the US has their White House, we have ours. Then there were another 2 or 3 accompanying or outlying buildings of that house, which were renovated and put in use for the operational directorates, the chief of staff, and I think for the soldiers who were guarding the general staff. So these buildings had been used by that peasant for the livestock and other needs of the farm, which, as I said, were renovated and developed and used for the developing directorates of the general staff. So initially I was in this White House.
You stated that the chief of the operational directorate was General Ramis Beyci, but he never arrived in Kosovo, and that his deputy was Sali Veseli.
Beyci, right.
I apologize for my pronunciation. And you said his deputy was Sali Veseli, and in witness preparation, you clarified this meant that in practice, you were the second ranking officer within the directorate, right?
Yes.
Who gave you your tasks while you were a member of the operational directorate?
I received my first task on the 18th of November until the 27th of November, and received this from Bislim Zurabi. My task was to go to the Territorial Brigade 122, which at that time was no longer a brigade, but there were the Lumi units. But I had to meet there with the person who had been made commander of that brigade with the purpose of developing and organizing, systemizing the Lumi units into a brigade. So for 9 days, I accompanied the appointed commander of the brigade, Vesel Malici, and Agim Deka, the commander of the 1st Battalion. So we would go into every village where Lumi units were in order to introduce the new brigade commander, to meet with the units and the civilians. This was my first task given to me by the Chief of Staff, Bislim Zurabi.
While you were a member of the operational directorate, other than Bislim Zurabi, did anybody else assign you any tasks? And to be clear, I'm interested in who, not the tasks themselves for now.
Only Sali Veseli.
So if relevant information came to your attention while you were a member of the operational directorate, who would you relay or mention that information to?
Asni rapport, asni informazzjoni.
No report, no information that came out of the operational directorate during my time there was not released from there without having received prior verification and signature of Sali Veseli, because I did not have the right to sign any documents released by the operational directorate. This was the task of Sali Veseli, who was an exceptionally good and skilled officer.
So here you're talking about information going out of the directorate. I'd like you to focus on when you learned of something, who would you talk to in the operational directorate about what you learned? Who would you go to?
Me Sali Veseli nkunu
I would go to Sali Veseli. If in his absence, I would see Bislim Zirapi. We were 3 officers, military officers at the General Staff.
flas për
I'm referring to that period of time. I apologize, the time I was there.
Moving to something slightly different, did you know a KLA member known as Murizi in 1998?
Agim Zogaj ka qenë.
Agil Zogaj. He was a soldier, short, of dark complexion, and I knew him as Commander Murizi.
Knowledge, what was this person's role in the KLA at the time in 98?
U ndaluan 2 gazetarë.
2 Serb reporters were detained. The rule was that reporters who were not accredited by the Office for Information and Communication of the KLA and who were caught in the territory of Kosovo, they would be detained. So this case involved these 2 journalists, reporters who were not accredited to be in the territory of Kosovo. They were detained by Shaban Draga, who brought them at the General Staff. There was a basement in the White House with 2 rooms, so they were placed there for 10, 12, or 15 days. Agim Zogaj was in charge of taking care of them.
That Agim Zogaj was in charge of taking care of them.
Po ishim unë Sali Veseli.
I and Sali Veseli were having breakfast, as I remember, and he came and asked us, what shall I do about the breakfast of those who were there? So we took part of our food, our breakfast, me and Sali Veseli, that is. We gave him 2 blankets, and he took those to them. This is how I understood it. Then I took on my duties, as I mentioned before, and then those individuals were released on the 28th of November, which means they spent there 12, 13, or 14 days. I know that those 2 rooms were then used for the female staff employed at the Directorate of the General Staff. So they were used by the female staff. But this was not a prison. It was not a prison, was not used as one, but they were just sleeping rooms or dormitories.
When Agim Zogaj came to speak to you and Sali Veseli about the journalists, am I understanding correctly that incident would fall between the time you got there on 15 November, but before you left for the task Zirapi gave you, which you told us was on the 18th November? Was it in those 3 days?
Po mund
Yes, I can say this was on the next day, 16th or 17th, not the first day. It was either on the 16th in the morning or on the 17th, because I know on the 18th I went on duty. So it was one of those 2 days, not the first day.
And do you know where Agimzoga Murizi lived at the time in November 98?
Nuk e ka pas shtëpi.
His house was not very far from the General Staff house. His family lived there.
At that home?
Po, kam shku
Yes, several times. I remember that his wife and his mother, I think, washed my clothes. When I changed them, the dirty ones, they washed them. And one time I had lunch there.
I'm moving to something else. In your ICTY interview, you stated that you were in Smolice when you saw the first introduction of a KLA spokesperson, and in your SPO interview, you state that the KLA spokesperson was Jakub Krasniqi. Could you clarify when it was that you were in Smolice and saw or learned of Jakub Krasniqi being introduced as the KLA spokesperson?
Më kujtohet për
I remember his first introduction as KLA spokesperson. It was something unexpected, not unexpected, but a great joy that he was introducing himself as a spokesperson, as a person with a name and last name, because initially, before, they were known with their pseudonyms. It was either the first or the second part of June, I'm not sure, but I do know that it was June 98, as far as I remember.
See Jakub Krasniqi at the KLA General Staff once you got there in November of 1998?
po, ai ka qenë.
Yes, he was there all the time. What we refer to as the White House.
Back a little bit to what you were saying about the Serbian journalists, I think you said. And you mentioned that they weren't accredited, and you mentioned an Office for Information and Communication of the KLA. Who was in charge of that office when you were in the General Staff from November of 98?
Zoti Krasniqi
Mr. Krasniqi was the director of the Directorate for Information at the General Staff. And there were the offices for information. There was in Pristina one, in Tirana. There was a spokesperson in Geneva, Brussels, Vienna, Berlin, Paris, London, and Washington. Mr. Krasniqi had such a position. I mean, his task was to coordinate all the information offices and to cooperate with them. That was his primary task of Mr. Krasniqi in the General Staff, at least the way I understood it. I am talking in the way I saw it, I understood it.
To your knowledge, what did the role of the KLA's General Inspector entail?
Roli i inspektorit të
The General Inspector's role for the KLA, I don't know how much that inspector managed to develop that sector. Actually, his duty was to appoint inspectors at operational zones, maybe also at the brigades. They should propose the general staff and appoint them as inspectors whose duty was to supervise all the activities of the units in the operational zones, in the brigades, all over the territory of the Kosovo, to identify any irregularities that they might identify as such, to report to the General Staff Chief and to propose measures to redress such shortcomings or irregularities. This is what I know in relation to the responsibility of a general inspector in an army. As to how much such a general inspector managed to develop this sector, I don't know, because you know that in January I left the general staff and went to Dukagjin.
In your SBO interview, you referred to Recep Selimi as the inspector of the general staff, and you mention him as one of the people entitled to attend briefings between KLA general staff members and the commanders of operational zones. Did you ever see Recep Selimi at the KLA general staff when you were based there from November of 1998?
I want to improve something and to recall you something. The truth is that I never knew the true name of Recep Selimi. I knew him only by the pseudonym of the 10th, Thaçi, in the general staff. From his position and function, he was also a member of the general staff of the KLA. And you are asking me about informative conversations. The way I saw them were meetings of the staff, because the zone commanders were equal members of the general staff, that close circle where the zone commanders, the directors of the operational zones, in the general staff, the chief of staff, the general inspector, and the chief of the directorates for legal affairs participated. Someone mentioned it as a military court. Within the directorate, they set up the military court. These were meetings that were held once a month.
Learn that the person known as the 10th or Thaçi during the war was actually Recep Selimi.
I learned it after the war.
Once again, focusing back on when you were at the general staff from November 98, did you see a person whom you knew then as Thaçi at the general staff around that time?
Yes, I saw him, I think. I remember I saw him several times coming in and going out. But he did not have any communication with me. He did not enter into my office in the operational directorate.
The person you saw was Thaçi.
Everybody knew that he was Thaçi. Sali Veseli knew him, Bislim Zerabi knew it, everybody knew that he was Thaçi, or the 10th.
Subject slightly, did you ever visit Turyaka after you joined the operational directorate?
That's where I slept and worked all the time. until I went to Ducagin.
Clear, I said Turiak, not something else. I'm asking about Turiak.
Turiak.
Oh, Turiak, yes, okay. I went to Turiak when I took over the first duty from the 18th to the 27th of November. That was the first and the last time during the war when I escorted Brigade Commander Vesel Malici, and there we had a meeting, like in every other village, with the unit there and with the villagers. I think it must have been 23rd or 24th of November.
Or know of Jacob Castrati and Sendescu?
I heard about them when I was wounded. There was a communique issued on behalf of the KLA whereby I was detained and was kept somewhere. It happened that we had this meeting in Turiak with villagers and the unit there, and there in the neighborhood of Castrati, in the neighborhood of Jakub Castrati, I think the meeting was held in his our room.
Just to clarify the answer, at least as it was translated, you said, I heard about them when I was wounded. There was a communique issued on behalf of the KLA whereby I was detained. I was kept somewhere. Did you say you were detained and kept somewhere or somebody else?
No. Maybe it was wrongly translated. The communique that Sendescu and Jakub Castrati were detained. Microphone.
Thank you, I apologize. Could you tell the judges briefly what, if anything, was discussed at the meeting, which you believe could have even been in the old room of Jacob Castrati?
Like in every meeting, I introduced the future brigade commander. I informed the unit and the villagers, the representatives of the families, because we summoned the heads of families to that meeting, introducing the new commander to them. And then I answered the questions I was asked from the participants. I spoke to them about the KLA, that we are going to liberate Kosovo, that we are being consolidated as a KLA, about the successes, about issues that were related to the situation, to give hope to the villagers, to give them examples, or to call on them in a way to mobilize to join the KLA. Things that every military man or every officer does with villagers and soldiers.
Thing may have taken place in Jacob Castrati's old room. While you were there around this time, did you meet any members of his family?
Yes, they were there with interpreters' explanation. Olda is a guest room. So yes, they were there. He was a very well-known activist, and such meetings were held at the Oldas, or guest rooms of people who were influential in that neighborhood. Of course, his family was there.
In the Oda, did his family mention anything to do with what you talked about earlier, that is that Jacob Castrati had been detained with Sendescu?
Po.
Yes. Yes, I remember it very well. I was asked whether I knew where they were and how they were. Jakub Castrati and Sendescu.
Once.
Para se të shkoja
Before going there, Shaban Dragaj told me he was a a relative of Sendescu. He had heard that these two were going to be released on the 28th of November. And I told the participants there, I remember very well because they mentioned it to me after the war every time I went there, because now we are even family related. A cousin of mine has his wife from there. They have mentioned what I said. When I said that in this room we are going to have lunch with Jakub Castrati, I wanted to tell them that he was going to come to be released. That happened on the 28th of November. Both of them were released.
In your SPO interview, you stated that when you were in the operational directorate, information from the operational zones would be provided over satellite phone. To your knowledge, was there one or more than one satellite phone at the KLA General Staff when you were based there?
As far as I know, every department of the General Staff, every directorate had to have a phone. The operational directorate had a phone. The Chief of Staff had such a phone. And when you asked me, I said that when the Chief of Staff went to the ground, I was responsible for his phone. Of course, he had to have a phone because he had to keep in touch with all the information centers, and I believe the other directories too must have had such phones.
Witness, you said when you asked me, referring, I believe, to myself. Do I understand correctly, you're referring to witness preparation last week?
Po.
Yes.
And Your Honours, we would briefly need to move into private session in light of the applicable restrictions on the use of the next document I want to use. I anticipate being in private session for around 10 minutes.
We will go into private session to protect the source of the exhibits, or the material, I'm sorry.
Your Honors, we're in public session.
All right, Mr. Malaco, we're going to give you a 10-minute break at this time. You may leave the courtroom with the court usher.
Indeed.
Thank you.
We're adjourned for 10 minutes.
All rise.
Be seated, please. Mr. Potch, we will quit today because the Salimi defense wants to make a statement. We'll quit at 25 after 4 instead of 4:30. You may bring the witness in.
And while that's happening, Your Honor, and unless I missed something via email, could I inquire what the statement will relate to? Is our presence required? Yeah, you'll be here. Okay.
You'll need to be here. It has to do with next week's witness.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honour. It's just a suggestion, a constructive suggestion, if I may, that I would want to raise for the court. Thank you.
We like constructive suggestions. Don't see very many. All right, Mr. Malaku, we continue with the questions from the SBO. Go ahead, Mr. Potch.
Thank you, Your Honor. We can take this document down, and instead I'd like to call up a page from the witness's book once again, and that is U0023041, U0023143, side by side with the English translation at U0023080, U0023141 ET. And in both, I'd like to turn to page U0023103, which in Albanian is page 63 of the PDF, and in English is 24. I apologize, it must be 62 in Albanian, so the previous page. And that's correct in the English. Thank you. And witness, once again, on the left is a page from your book. And if yes, in the Albanian, let's please zoom into the last 3 paragraphs on the left, so that's good. We could zoom in further down, that's good. And I will start reading the corresponding to that, and then on to the next page. And in English, if we could zoom into the 5 or so lines before and after the number 1 to 2 appears, so we could scroll down a little bit. Yes, and I will start reading from before Rambouillet. So witness, you can follow in Albanian or listen in, you can read in Albanian or listen in Albanian. I will read and then ask you some questions. Before Rambouillet, Rechak happened. The capture of 8 Yugoslav soldiers in Shala happened. The discussions for the release happened in Dragobil and in Drenica. What was important about the discussions in Dragobil? We were legitimized before the internationals as a regular army structure, as having subordinate levels, because the soldiers were captured in Shale by a brigade unit, while the discussions for the release were held at the General Staff in Dragobil. I'll stop there for now, witness, and I believe you even mentioned this incident earlier today, but my question for you now,
Yes, yes.
to answer now, is how do you know that discussions for the release of the soldiers happened in Dragobil and Drenica?
Po, unë isha që
I was there. I was at the General Staff in the Directorate, Operational Directorate. 11th was the one who was appointed to meet international representatives, Bislim Zurabi and the Chief of Staff, and other members. So we knew that negotiations were underway because soldiers that were captured in the Shal operation zone were exchanged with some soldiers we had captured in December, when a column of our soldiers fell into an ambush and many were killed and some were taken prisoners. So it was an exchange of soldiers with the mediation of some persons from the International Monitoring Mission. So we know that was taking place. The media too spoke about these meetings and contacts. It was something that the population knew about.
Could you clarify what month and year this incident took place?
Po,
Sometime Mui Krasnihi and the others who were caught in on the 14th of December. The negotiations for the exchange of soldiers were held in December or January. I don't recall correctly.
Response, you mentioned 11th. Could you tell us the name and surname of that person?
mas lufte kom kuptu.
I understood after the war that this was Sokol Bashota.
We'll continue reading from where I left off, which means that I believe we're now at the last line in Albanian, so soon we'll need to move over to the top of the other side of the page. There was yet another incident that should be mentioned in the month of January, when a group of 10 soldiers from Shala e Baigores was surrounded in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Mitrovica by the Serbian forces. Via the OSCE verifiers, it was requested by the KLA-GS to give them an order to turn themselves in 15 minutes. However, the KLA-GS gave an order for them not to surrender and sent a special unit of Drenica and units from Shala to their aid in order to extract them from the encirclement. The Serbs incurred great damage in personnel and equipment. These two moments indicated to the international community that we are an organized army and that even the last soldier in that structure listens to the orders of the General Staff. Now, witness, my question for you is, how do you know about the January KLA General Staff order not to surrender and the KLA General Staff sending a special unit of Drenica and units from Shala?
Po, ky operacion u zhvillu.
This operation was carried out in the operational directorate. With the operational directorate, we had a radio device which allowed us to intercept communications of the military and police forces of the Serbian army. So we knew how we could come to the aid of our soldiers there. The Serbian forces asked through the OSCE representatives for them to surrender, providing guarantees that they would be treated in compliance with the international conventions. However, we could not trust the Serbs. And for them to surrender within 15 minutes, as it reads here, actually they waited for 2 days for our soldiers to surrender. It's not that we gave an order for them not to surrender. We were not in a position to do so. It's themselves who did not want to surrender. We knew from the interceptions which path or corridor or could we use to come to the raid. And the special unit of Brigade 111 and the special unit of the Shala unit were used to extract the soldiers from that area. One of them was killed, and I think another one was wounded. They, on the other side, suffered losses. They know better how many. I know that I told this as an example because the international observers had come there based on the Security Council resolution. They were there to monitor and report back on the organizational level of the KLA. That is the reason why I said that I exaggerated here a little bit, not too much in terms of strict organization. However, the general staff as such was respected, and this is important to underline. We gained our place, our seat at the table of the negotiations in Rambouillet, also because of the assessment given by the international monitoring mission about us. We did not gain this right in fighting the opposing party who treated us constantly as terrorists. We were an organized voluntary army.
Excerpt, it is written, and earlier you told us what is written reflects what you said during this dialogue, that the KLAGS, if we go a little further, sent a special unit of Drenica and units from Shala. Is that correct? Did the KLA General Staff send a special unit of Drenica and units from Shala to the aid of the soldiers at issue here?
Unë këtu vetëm ne ndryshim.
One change here, one thing I changed here, because the book was meant for the wider public, Mr. Prosecutor, the General Staff does not have a commanding role. The operation was carried out by the Operational Directorate of the General Staff, under the supervision and direction of the Chief of Staff. For example, the Director of the Directorate for Information has nothing to do with the operation of extracting 10 soldiers from a neighborhood in Mitrovica, or another operation which I led myself in another neighborhood in Podujeva. This was carried out and conducted by the Operational Director to the General Staff and the Chief of Staff.
Could you confirm or correct me if I misunderstand? Am I understanding correctly that you're saying that the Operational Directorate of the General Staff and the Chief of Staff are the ones who sent a special unit of Drenica and units from Shala in this instance?
This was our job. We were at war. We were not fighting each other with candies.
Take this document down, and Your Honor, we would need to move back into private session for the same reason. I want to go back to the document earlier. It would be for no longer than 5 minutes, and this should be the last private session I require for today.
Into private session, please, to protect the source of the material.
Your Honor, we're in public session.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Potch.
Thank you. Witness, I'm turning to a different matter. In your SBO interview, you stated that during a January 1999 briefing, Ramesh Haradinai, commander of the Dukhajini operational zone, requested that the KLA General Staff assign you to help the Dukhajini operational zone, and that you were not exactly sure about the date when you went from the KLA General Staff to Dukhajini. Is that correct?
Yes, it could be the second half of January, because the documents we saw mentioned the 17th of January.
To be clear, witness, when you say the documents we saw, are you referring to witness preparation last week?
Yes.
SPOE 00226468 SPOE 00226480, side by side with the English translation, which is at SPOE 00226468 SPOE 00226480-ET revised, and turn to page ending 226473 in both versions, please. Witness, as before, on the left of your screen is a document in Albanian, it's handwritten, and on the right is its English translation. Had you seen the document on the left before I showed it to you last week?
No.
It is dated 21 January 1999, and at the top states agenda, and then information on the meeting with operational zones commanders. And I'd like now to turn to the next page, 226474, please, in both. And at the top, thank you, court officer, at the top of this page, we see it says Naim Moloku should be transferred to Dukhajini for assistance. And witness, does that accord with your recollection of events, meaning that it's possible you went to Dukhajini on or after 21 January 1999?
Yes.
Immediately below that I refer to reads Shaban Draga should be transferred to Drenica. Do you recall whether Shaban Draga was transferred to Drenica?
We were transferred on the same day. We greeted each other. Shaban Draga went to Drenica from Brigade 121 in Pastrik. He went to Zone 1 in Drenica. But I do not know in which brigade or what exactly was his new task.
In the fifth entry, we see a reference to Plaku. Do you know who that is?
I understood after the war that he was Jeladin Gashi. If this note or minutes are referring to him, if there was no other person who went by the same pseudonym Plaku.
The note here says Plaku should be replaced in the logistics by a person who knows the armaments. To your knowledge, did Jeladin Gashi, the one you knew was known as Plaku, have anything to do with logistics in the KLA?
Yes, if we're referring to the person I'm thinking of, he was in charge of the logistics in the direction of Kukas or Pastrik, because we had another direction from Bayramtsur. We had several points and various many supply routes. Plaku had the direction in Pastrik and Kukas, and in Bayram's rule was Çerim Kelmendi, and Ilirkunu Shezi until he was killed.
2 pages shown, which are SPOE 00226473 and 226474.
Any objection? No objection is heard. SPOE 00226473 and 226474 are admitted.
Your Honor, those will be assigned Exhibit P02095, if we can just confirm the classification.
Public.
It's reclassified as public.
We can take the document down. During witness preparation, you stated that after the KLA General Staff meeting with Ramesh Haradinaj, when Ramesh Haradinaj made this request for your transfer, you were called to Jakub Krasnici's office, where Ramesh Haradinaj was also present. You were informed of the request, and you agreed to the transfer. And you said that at a later time, Jakub Krasnici gave you the order for this transfer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Call up SPOE 00228819-SPOE 00228819, side by side with its English translation, which is the same year end with -ET at the end. Thank you, court officer. Witness, once again, we see a document in Albanian on the left and its English translation on the right. Is the document in
Yes.
that you received from Jakub Krasnici?
Yes.
We seek admission of this document.
Objection.
Can I give a short clarification? Mr. Jakub Krasnici, this, to my knowledge, this position of this secondary position of deputy commander, he held this position for about 2 months, 1 or 2 months, until he was then appointed a member of the delegation to Rambouillet. His main task and duty was spokesperson of the KLA in charge of information and media. Somebody had to take over the duties of this position because of the procedural rules. The position had to be filled in a way. I am able to explain to you why such a position was needed or existed. Can I explain? Will you give me a minute to explain?
When you refer to
Fine.
rules, are you talking about there?
It's a procedural rule in an army that, for example, there need to be a higher position, higher than the chief of staff, to decide for brigades commanders in the zones. Secondly, the KLA was not institutional for us to have a general commander and the president to appoint or dismiss commanders of operational zones. Therefore, we had to come up with a position above the chief of staff in order to fill in this position. So the chief of staff would propose the zone commander, and then the appointment would be made by a higher position, by a higher authority. The chief of staff appointing the zone commander was only implemented by the LAP operational zone. In the Ducagini operational zone, it was not the case. It's this function, this position. And in order for me to be transferred from the general staff as a high-ranking officer to the Ducagini zone, this needed to be done by somebody who was at a higher position than the chief of staff. Hence, this position was filled during that period of time by Jakub Kasnici, who otherwise was director of the information office and spokesperson of the KLA.
Tender, I think you were checking about objections.
On the tender, any objection?
No objection.
None? SPOE 00228819 to SPOE 00228819, and the same in the English translation is admitted.
Your Honor, that will be assigned exhibit P02096, and if we can confirm classification.
Public, thank you.
Thank you. It'll be reassigned as public.
And we can keep the document on our screens, and if we could please zoom into point number 5 in both the English and the Albanian. Witness, so this is the same document we were just discussing, and as you can see in Albanian, it says at point number 5, the superior has to personally assess the security and the self-defense measures according to the combat circumstances, asking for assistance from the operations zone commander in case this might be needed. And my question, witness, is once you went to the Ducagini operational zone following this ordinance, did you assess the security and self-defense measures according to the combat circumstances there?
Pika 5 është
Point 5 is in conformity with the military regulations. When a high-ranking officer is sent from one position to another, even in the war situation, the measure for self-defense should be assessed by the person himself. The signatory of this document and this ordinance has shirked the responsibility from himself to myself, that is, if my security was affected. The idea is that I had to assess the security situation and the self-defense measures. If I thought that I was at risk, I had to ask assistance from the Ducagini operational zone. This is in order, pursuant to the military rules.
With this point number 5 in practice once you went to the Ducagini operational zone?
pa me tregu drejtën, unë ju kom
To tell you the truth, I trusted all soldiers that the Ducagini operational zone gave me to accompany me. I didn't doubt his decision. I never had any doubts about the soldiers who accompanied me. I never undertook any assessment regarding the reliability of the people surrounding me, dressed in KLA uniform.
Carry out any forms of inspections in relation to the troops once you went to the Ducagini operational zone?
tonë kohën kom qenë në për
All the time I was at the outside lines of the free territories then, and all the time I inspected and checked on the deep units of the Ducagini operational zone. Maybe I was the only one who went to Brigade 133 and 136 as a high-ranking officer. To my recollection, the zone commander was never in those two brigades, but I was.
Witness, during your time in Ducagini in 1999, do you recall who the Brigade 131 commander was?
ka qenë Daud Haradin.
Daud Haradini.
Brigade 132 at that time?
Sa kujtoj unë Malik
To my recollection, Malik Ndrecaj.
3-3 at that time.
Azem Veseli.
Azem Veseli.
Do you know someone called Nasser Shatri?
Nasser Shati ka
Nasser Shatri was in Brigade 133, but I don't recall whether he was a commander of the military police unit or of a special unit within Brigade 133. All the brigades in the Kosovo Liberation Army had a unit for rapid intervention, or as we called it, a special unit.
Of Brigade 134 when you were there in 1999.
është vraku
He was killed in January when I went. After 5 days, he was killed. Then some others also were killed. And some people from the brigade escorted them for medical treatment abroad. I started to re-establish Brigade 134 in Ratish, Lower Ratish. I started with 8 soldiers. The brigade commander was proposed by me, Ismet Ahmeti. Then Ramush Aradinaj approved him and appointed him.
Name of the brigade commander before Ismet Ahmeti, the one you said died?
ka qenë Agron
Agron Rama.
Who was the brigade commander in Brigade 136 when you were in the Dukagjini zone in 1999?
ka qenë
Florim Krasniqi. Qela. Florim Qela. Officer who had finished the military academy in Belgrade for infantry.
Knowledge, were there any issues or problems in relation to this brigade when you were there in 1999?
ka qenë një divergjencë
There was an issue, a divergence opinion between Rugova mountains, which comprised 13 villages. There was Ismail Haidari with a group of soldiers. He was a commander of part of the area, but the largest part was commanded by Brigade 136. Salilaici was a commander, chief of staff. I stayed there about 7 days, I think.
Do you know Ramis Murici?
po Ramizi ka
Ramiz was Ismail Haidari.
Ramis Murici is the same person as Ismail
Murici,
Haidari.
po.
Murici. Yes, the same.
And was there a time when this person was no longer involved with Brigade 136 as such?
po
Yes, Ramiz Murici went to Albania afterwards, and I didn't see him until after the war.
Knowledge was, do you know whether Ramis Murici was affiliated with the LDK or with the FARC?
është folë shumë
People spoke much about FARC, but we, military people, didn't make any difference. We always understood one another, and our aim was to try to contribute to the liberation of Kosovo, because we saw major problems that happened in Croatia and mostly in Bosnia, where many armies and several commanding lines were established. We didn't want the creation of two different armies with differing commanding lines. We tried at whatever we could not to have such divergences as to come to an armed conflict. There were only political frictions, fortunately.
Commander of Brigade 138 when you were in Ducagini in 99.
Kam shku me 8 maj.
I went there on the 8th of May 99 in Brigade 138, and the commander was Rustem Berisha. I went there on orders of Bislim Zurapi. He gave me the order on the phone.
He gave you the order to do when you went there.
Kom qenë brigadën.
I was in Brigade 133, which had the staff in Studenitz. On the 17th, I think, of April, I received the phone call and was told to take Zim Ostreni, to go to Brigade 136, to get Nusret Krasniqi with pseudonym Hansi, and go and join Brigade 138 under the command of Rustem Berisha, because I'm going to Albania to lead the operation Shigeta, which means arrow. That was the order.
Do this topic, and then with your leave, we can excuse the witness. I'll do my best. Witness, where was the command of Brigade 138 based when you went there?
The command of the Brigade 138 was in Papai village in Albania. The brigade itself was within the territory of Kosovo.
And briefly, what is the reason for them being in Albania? For the command being in Albania?
Because they felt safer there.
Thank you, Honor. That's a good place to stop with the witness for today.
Thank you, Mr. Potch. Witness, Mr. Malaku, we are finished for today. We're finished for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Please do not speak with anyone about your testimony outside of the court. If someone tries to talk to you, please let us know. And you may leave with the court usher at this time. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, with your leave, since the matter concerns a separate witness, my colleague Mr. Halling will respond as necessary.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we could just go into private session, please.
Into private session, please, Madam Court Officer.
Your Honors, we're now in public session.
We're adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow.
All rise.